Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a reality we all deal with every single day, and we're going to break it down to see what's actually happening behind the scenes. We're talking about something you probably never ever think about once it leaves your driveway. Yep, your garbage. We are getting into the surprisingly wild and honestly kind of fascinating geopolitics of cross-border waste management. Because right now, the global supply chain of trash is literally breaking down, and it's setting off this massive chain reaction. So think about it. You wheel your bin to the curb every week, right? The truck rumbles up, empties it out, drives away, and bam, problem solved. Or so we think. But what's really interesting here is the international passport your household trash might actually be carrying. You see, waste management isn't just this hyper-local municipal thing. In a lot of North America, it's actually a massive, multi-billion-dollar cross-border industry. And right now, that entire system is under some unprecedented stress.
If we look at the official U.S. Customs definition, specifically Harmonized Tariff Schedule 3825, it defines municipal waste as just your ordinary, everyday refuse. We're talking stuff collected from households, hotels, restaurants, construction sites, the whole shebang. And historically, thanks to bilateral agreements and customs rulings, all this waste has just flowed freely across the U.S.-Canada border. The duty rate? Absolutely zero. It's basically classified as free. Even if it gets shredded up and processed, as long as it's mixed, it's enjoyed this VIP free pass. But as you'll see, when international trade deals start to crack, this free-flowing river of trash becomes one of the very first major casualties.
And honestly, locally, the squeeze is already on. It's directly hitting people's wallets. For example, the City of Toronto recently approved a 3.75% interim rate hike for their 2026 solid waste bin fees. So if you've got a small bin, you're looking at nearly $318 a year. Upgrading to an extra large? That's going to cost you almost $608. The city is just facing these intense structural budget pressures. And the cost of simply making our trash disappear? Well, it's climbing really, really fast. Now, the absolutely crucial point behind all these rising municipal costs and the escalating cross-border tensions we're about to get into comes down to the single, honestly pretty alarming number, 9. According to industry reports and environmental analysts, 9 is the number of years we have left until the province of Ontario could completely run out of domestic landfill space. I mean, just think about that for a second. In less than a decade, Canada's most populous province is going to completely exhaust its own capacity to bury its own trash. It's a massive logistical bottleneck, and it's forced municipalities to desperately look for some kind of release valve outside of their own borders. So how do they survive this capacity crunch? Well, Ontario has leaned heavily on exporting its trash, and that reliance has caused a dramatic recent spike in volume. We're talking a 19% year-over-year increase in waste exported directly to the United States. Which brings us to the raw tonnage. Over 3.2 million tons of Ontario waste have been exported recently, and the vast majority of that, it's heading straight into landfills in the state of Michigan. Since Ontario just hasn't been able to build enough local infrastructure to keep up with its own growth, Michigan has essentially become this absolutely vital safety valve for Canadian municipalities. We're talking hundreds of trucks crossing the border every single day for no other reason than to dump Canadian garbage into American soil. But here's the catch. Michigan is now trying to slam that door completely shut. For years, the state offered these incredibly cheap dumping fees. I'm talking just 36 cents per ton. But now legislators are pushing to drastically hike that state surcharge all the way up to $5 per ton. They're aggressively pushing new legislation to restrict hazardous waste expansions, mandate these really strict public comment periods, and ultimately just price foreign waste out of their state entirely. And this local dispute over landfill fees? It's actually caught right in the crossfire of a massive, escalating macroeconomic trade war. Let's look at how this played out. In early 2025, the U.S. enacted sweeping, universal 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico. Canada, of course, immediately fired back with retaliatory tariffs. Then, by early 2026, the U.S. administration explicitly targeted the USMCA, the massive free trade agreement that basically governs North America, and declared it irrelevant. Fast forward to July 2026, and the U.S. formally declined to renew the agreement at all. Without the USMCA, that core geopolitical framework, the one that kept tariffs at zero and let all this municipal waste flow across the border duty-free, is totally crumbling. And that leaves millions of tons of trash effectively stranded. So as these international agreements fall apart, both jurisdictions are scrambling. They're passing sweeping, highly reactionary legislation just to handle the fallout of a closed border. On one side, you've got Michigan passing Senate Bills 246 and 247 to raise those tipping fees and basically build a legislative wall against imported waste. On the flip side, you have Ontario suddenly staring down millions of tons of trapped garbage and a ticking 9-year clock. They introduced Bill 5 to drastically, and I mean drastically, fast-track their own domestic landfill infrastructure.
To manage all this newly trapped waste, Ontario passed Bill 5, officially called the Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act. Now, this is a seriously powerful legislative tool. It's essentially designed to bypass standard environmental assessments. It lets the government declare these special economic zones, where provincial laws and local municipal bylaws can just be completely overwritten. For instance, they're using it to force through a really controversial landfill expansion in the small agricultural town of Dresden, Ontario. They are completely bypassing the standard environmental review process and even sidestepping broader protections like the Endangered Species Act, all just to make sure this garbage has somewhere to go.
As you might guess, critics are pushing back hard against these sweeping deregulations. Tim Gray, who is the executive director of Environmental Defense, heavily criticized Bill 5 and all these related environmental rollbacks. He actually called them two peas in an undemocratic pod. And this perfectly highlights the intense domestic friction this whole trade war has sparked. When the border closes, the pressure really cooks domestically. It's literally pitting provincial governments against local municipalities, Indigenous communities, and environmental advocates, all of whom are fighting against having these fast-tracked megadumps forced into their backyards. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I really want to leave you with this final thought. When borders close, when tariffs start flying and those local landfills finally fill up, who ultimately pays the price for what we throw away? Well, we all do. We pay through skyrocketing municipal fees, major environmental compromises, and just general geopolitical instability. But, out of all this chaos, we're actually seeing some truly fascinating market adaptations. With Ontario's landfill fees for mixed waste hovering around a pretty punishing $60 per ton right now, innovators are actually designing entirely new systems to just avoid landfills altogether. Using advanced on-device AI running right on standard smartphones, companies can now instantly scan and classify construction waste right there at the source. They're verifying its purity on the spot, so instead of being dumped, it can be recycled into high-value biocarbon. By avoiding the landfill entirely, they sidestep those massive fees. It just goes to show that when the hidden supply chain of trash breaks down, we're basically forced to either pay the ultimate price or innovate our way out of the garbage pile. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep questioning exactly where your footprint goes, and I'll catch you in the next one.